This is Money Talks. We're so excited to have you here today. Purse Strings, we are a woman founded business offering a female centric platform that provides financial resources for women. We offer straightforward financial advice and a network of vetted financial professionals who specialize in serving women. Our mission is really to be that destination site for women seeking financial professionals to provide supports, products, and services tailored to their needs. So I don't know if you guys were able to catch our podcast that we put out last week, but we had a travel planner come really talking about how you can hire someone to really make some amazing trips. That way you can also be a guest on your own vacation, as we find, especially women, once you plan everything and all this stuff, since you're the admin of the whole trip, sometimes you don't even get to enjoy it as much as you would like. But we know traveling out of the country has so many things going on. I don't know, a lot of dynamics there. And we have so many new nomads in our community. And so we wanted to bring in Otto today. He's one of our vetted financial professionals. He's a Purse Strings approved professional, but also really specializes with working with clients who live outside of the country as well. And so I learned that America is one of the only countries where you can still have to pay taxes. And so how do we save on some of this? How do we prepare for some of this? How do we really put ourselves in the best position so we can enjoy our trip and not have to deal with all these admin tasks? So before I pass it to Otto, I just do want to remind everyone that this half hour is for you. So if you have any questions along the way, any comments, please feel free to jump off mute, throw them in the chat. We'd love to make sure those are answered in this half hour. So with that, Otto, I'm just going to pass it right off to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie. And thank you, Dr. Barr, for having me. And I hope you're all having a great day. Let's talk about this. We have limited time, so I'll just jump and start. And all that I'm going to say today, it's a lot of high level concepts, right? This is much, much deeper. And it's, of course, for education purposes. If you need advice, you do need to seek out advice from a professional and hopefully a professional. If it's something that is cross border, a professional that does specialize in cross border financial planning, investments, taxes, just because it definitely changes the formula for overall finances. But let's see on the chat who has been here, who's is here today, sorry, that has spent time abroad, extended time abroad. Someone here? Let's see. Do we have anyone living, let's say, more than 2 months out of the country? I haven't, but want to. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we all want that. Right? Me too. Me too, right? So let's say that I'm pretty sure we have all traveled. So, okay, there's in the 20s. Hey, I did that when I was 18, right? All that freedom when you're young, right? 6 months in Spain, in España. So excellent. Beautiful. Okay, good. So, yeah, so that is very common, right? When you're younger, you have all these opportunities to travel to Europe or other places, be on student trips, programs abroad. 6 weeks, good. Yeah, 6 weeks, 6 months. Yeah, that's a long program there, right? But 6 weeks is still great. But all those opportunities do arise when you're young, but also there is a lot of Americans right now leaving the country actually and moving abroad. It's actually a record of Americans moving abroad right now. The Wall Street Journal actually has published a series of great reports about it. And now the record is that we have more of a net people leaving the country than arriving at this point. So a lot of people, and it's not all political, right? That's the first thought that you would say, okay, it's a lot of politics. Yeah, absolutely. For many people, it is a catalyst. But the reality is, in the last, 80 years after the Second World War, America has been the world leader in the economics, in financials, and all these things. And we have become citizens of the world, right? We become global citizens also in America because of the high immigration rates in the last two centuries. We have connections with probably most countries in the world. So that's why you do see a lot of people that want to reconnect, want to explore, want to also maybe escape the higher cost of living in the US as it is right now. So let's dig in more into that, right? So let's talk about the basics. So as Maggie said, so the US is just one of two countries that taxes its citizens that live abroad. It doesn't matter where they live, they can live in the North Pole, and they still will have to file if they have income above the thresholds. They will still have to file a US tax return. Doesn't matter where they live. Okay. Other country that does that is Eritrea in Africa. That's it. All the other countries have an exit system where as you leave the country, maybe in a couple of years, you're off the tax system. But the US is not, right? And this affects not only citizens, but also permanent residents. So what you have heard about green card holders, right? So green card holders, permanent residents of this country, and US citizens are subject to these rules. The only way to not be subject to these rules is to completely expatriate, right? And that's a huge decision, a completely different conversation, right? A lot of implications. But the US, as I said, that is the cornerstone of all this. That if you're going to move abroad at some point to live, to retire, to spend considerable time abroad, most likely at some point of your journey, you're going to have to manage two tax systems, the US and the local tax system, wherever you are, depending on the rules. A trip, if you're being a tourist, right? A lot of people go to Europe in the summer. That's the most popular destination during the summer. So being a tourist means that you are traveling to Spain or France, wherever, and you're just doing it for leisure, or to connect with family. You're not going to have any major economic activities while you're abroad, right? Other than eating, purchasing things, shopping, living the good life. But you're not there to work, right? You may take a call from work if they call you or something like that, but you are not traveling with the purpose of having economic activity out abroad. So that's the tourist profile, right? Now, then that has gotten a little bit more extended with time now that we have all this great technology, like we are all in different parts of the US and we're all talking together here on a camera, right? Because of technology and the internet and all these things, now it's more easy than ever to just travel abroad, stay some time, and then basically you can work sometime abroad, come back, or permanently moved. Now, it is at that point when things start getting complicated because let's say that you work for a US company and they say to you, yeah, sure, go ahead, just spend the summer, go to Spain or go to Italy. That's fine. It's just have a great vacation and you still work for us and you still do things from that country and you get a tourist visa. Most tourist visas will run from 30 to 90 days. Some have larger extensions, but you go there, you're like, oh great, this is great, I'm working and all that. And yeah, you do some tourist activity, but mainly you're working from there. So in some countries, like example, Italy, you might be actually taxed for that activity, even though you don't work for an Italian organization. Or maybe you're just thinking, oh yeah, I'm cool here and all that, but they will still tax you because you're having economic activity from their soil. Okay. So that's just a brief example. So if someone is out there considering becoming what they call a digital nomad, right? Just working abroad, you do need to do your research and see what are the local rules because you might be subject to a tax you don't think you're going to be subject to. And this can also happen in other with other cases. It doesn't have to be work. Maybe if you're like we have the snowbirds here in Florida, right? People who during the nice weather down here from November to April are in Florida, but when it gets hot and muggy like it is right now, they just go up north or they go out west and they go back to the state that they were originally from. If you do that internationally, you do have to monitor your days, right? Because if primarily if you spend more than a certain amount of days in some countries, you will start becoming a tax resident there, and then you'll have to file there also and pay taxes. So it is really important. An example in Spain, you become a tax resident after 183 days living there. Now, important to know, and this is where timing happens. Let's say if you move in January, or let's say not even January, let's say if you move in May, let's say you just move in May to Spain. Wow, you're so excited. And then you trigger the 183 days after that. You will be subject most likely to taxes from January and on, and not from May in Spain. So those are little rules that every country has. So definitely do your research before having some kind of arrangement like that, right? Just being
So, Ada,
smart. Go ahead.
so there's a question in the chat of if you're self-employed, you bring your laptop, you're getting work done while you're living a couple weeks abroad. You're there to live and experience the culture and enjoy the country, but you're also getting work done incidentally. It sounds like, is there a threshold of how much work you can get done in the country before you're charged for this? Or is it more of a time
Right.
thing? Or is it more very country specific?
And very country specific. So what I would say is, okay, if it's something that it's not going to be published out there where you're on vacation, but you brought your laptop and you're casually working from there, checking your emails and things like that. Most cases, probably you're okay. But if you are there and you rent an apartment and you become part of a community, at least on a loose sense, and you're actively working hours, like 8 hours a day or part time, then I would say it is important for you. If it is for a short time, it might be okay also. It just depends on the rules. But if it's going to be for an extended period, talking about more than a month, 2 months, and more than that, then you should research and make sure everything you go with a plan, right? And not that they're gonna just they don't have spies out there just to check on you, that kind of stuff. But the authorities know that there is an American here, right? When you go to the port of entry, you get registered in the country, and they monitor those things. So they know that you're somewhere in the country. So it is better to go with a plan and just be mindful of the very specific rules and trying to avoid things like that. But yeah, it is mostly fine if it's for a short time, right? But the longer the time, then things need to be planned out, I would say. And
And I
it's
think
very
that
con
covered a little bit of our next question of like, how does the government know? Which is really through that visa, that stamping, that extended, you get, approval to stay there for a bit.
yeah, and you need to get visas now. So now Americans for the first time in many decades need to get visas to enter Europe. And now actually Europe just started their scanning system not even a month ago, I think. So now it's the stamp thing that you see like at the beginning of National Lampoon's Vacation thing, right? Everybody just can recall that and laugh, right? That thing, it's going out of style. You'll still have it for some countries, but in the European Union, that's phasing out. But yeah, they know you're in the country, right? And not they will be on top of you or anything, but they know, and some countries are better than others just pursuing you, right? And just making sure you're in compliance. But that's something that does happen. It's common. Now, let's see, let's get ahead here. We talked about this.
Yeah, I'd love to
Okay.
talk about that foreign earned income exclusion,
Right.
who qualifies and how you can avoid being taxed twice if you can.
Right. So the main reason for planning for this situations is that you want to avoid double taxation because America will make you file a tax return and your local where you live, they're going to also make file and pay. So there's different things that help with this. One of them is the foreign earned income inclusion. And I say earned, right? And that's really important for advisors, right? Just say earn income, right? Earn income. And it's because, for example, if you are a digital nomad and you go to X country to work from there, right? You get paid, you're doing all your work from there. Then when you file your US tax return, you are able to apply for this. And then that income will not be counted towards your US tax calculation. Now, there are some, of course, requirements for that. In order to use the exemption, you need to be 330 days abroad, right? So definitely, if you're going to be a person who's just going to be 6 months here, 6 months there, it's not going to work. you need to be there's two tests, the days test, right? The time test, and also they call it also physical presence test, but also the physical test, which means that you are subject to the taxation of the country you're living in. You're a tax resident. So based on those two, yes, you can use it, right? And yeah, you can go 30 days vacation to the US, but you need to be 330 days in the country where you're claiming that. Okay. It also covers only earned income, right? That's why I said earned income, right? So it's not going to cover dividends, interest, capital gains, rentals. All other types of income are not going to be exempted. Those will go into your 1040 in the US. Okay. Now, there's another thing called the foreign tax credit, which usually tends to work better because it covers more. Now, it also depends on the situation. Usually, for lower tax jurisdictions, like if you go to a place where taxes are lower and you have decent job, not a lot of earnings, then yeah, the exemption might work perfectly there. But then if you go to a higher tax jurisdiction, then it's probably in your best interest to use the foreign tax credit more than the exemption. Because it is a credit, we know for a tax credit, you can reduce your tax liability dollar for dollar. So let's say you go to Spain. Spain actually has pretty high tax rates. You can go up to 47% bracket pretty quickly, by the way. It's not the same step by step thing that we have here in the States. So in that case, if you end up paying a lot of tax in Spain, then there's a way where you file in the US, you can take a credit for that amount that you pay and then take a reduction on your tax liability in the US for that dollar for dollar, right? So it just depends. And that's why planning is needed, right? We need to take a look at the situation, where you're going, how the local tax system works, and how we're going to make this just work for your advantage. One very important thing, FBAR and FATCA, okay? And I would say even more FBAR than FATCA. FBAR is reporting on your foreign accounts. So that is a report that you don't do on your tax return. It's actually on a website for FinCEN, the Department of Treasury. And you report foreign accounts that you have with at least $10,000. That's the threshold. And it can be one account or it could be multiple accounts and they amount all to $10,000. A lot of Americans that move abroad do not know this. And many are in non-compliance right now. Many of them. I actually had one call me yesterday when I helped them get in compliance. So that's very crucial that you know that if you're going to be abroad, you're going to retire or you're going to have a life there. And you're probably going to have more than that balance throughout the year, right? It can go up and down, but as soon as you hit that $10,000 threshold, you need to report. And you need to go online. You can also have a cross-border tax preparer help you with that to enter it. And it's reported and it's fine. You're in compliance. FATCA is more for assets abroad and it has higher thresholds. So let's say you inherited some investments abroad from families that are like $200,000. Those need to be reported. And FATCA is in fact a form in your tax return. And you do the reporting, you submit it, and you're in compliance. So those are two biggies for people moving abroad. Also, let's see, you know, let's talk about citizenship for a moment, right? So citizenship basically gets you the access to the country. If you're a citizen of the US, you can arrive at a port entry here and be welcome. You're a citizen, right? Or a permanent resident also, right? But citizenship, if we emphasize in that, you have access to the country, right? And it's the same for other countries. If you want to enter it freely, you need citizenship or permanent residence. Now, this is important because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm tired of the U.S. I'm tired of all this chaos, all this craziness. I want to just expatriate and just renounce my U.S. citizenship." Number one, it is a very bureaucratic process. Your assets need to be evaluated. If you have lots of assets, you may pay a pretty hefty exit tax that I personally call like a preemptive estate tax. Okay. Also, the question about access, right? Let's just remember during COVID, right? Ports of entry were closed here in the US, and only US citizens were allowed into the country, right? So if you're going to have family in the US and you want access to them, then probably renouncing to your citizenship is not in your best interest. So that's one thing to understand. Now, citizenship will get you into the country. It will probably get you, for example, if you want to, let's say you are a EU citizen. You're like, I have some prospects now. They are Turkish. So they are EU citizens also, and they want to move to Spain. In that case, because they are EU citizens already, they can enter freely. They can go to other countries within the EU and the Schengen area in Europe and travel freely, right? So they have the access to travel to do all these things because they have the citizenship. And also, if you have permanent residence in a EU country, you can do that. Now, also, they will have less requirements. For example, if they want to go and do the paperwork to just live in Spain, retire there. In Spain, if you want to retire and not have any work activity, you need to apply for a visa for EU citizens. The process is much, much simpler. And the requirements for income are much, much lower, are three times less, sorry, than what would be for an American just trying to get there as a retiree, right? So there's benefits to having citizenship. So you can certainly use it to your advantage if you have more than one. Lucky you. I'm actually thinking myself in Spain, there's a way of getting citizenship through heritage, and I'm Puerto Rican, descendants of Spaniards and people from Portugal and all over, right? But in this global era, it might pay off to have two passports just to give you that access to another place in the world. And not that America is bad to be stuck in America. America is a great country still, but having that access helps a lot, and it can help with your lifestyle. Let's talk
I,
and
I
go
know
ahead.
we're kind of getting short on time, so I
Yeah,
wanted to see if anyone here has any specific questions they'd like to
yeah,
ask. Happy to answer those. Feel free to jump off mute or throw them in the chat.
yes,
One question I kind of had, Otto, is let's say you work in America, you did all the things, right? You paid all your taxes, and then you're like, I'm going to retire and go to Mexico. Would you still get Social Security? Because you paid into it all those years, but you're no longer
yeah,
living in America.
yeah. So Social Security in most of the countries that Americans go to, it is they can get their benefits there. However, there needs to be strong coordination with the Social Security office. Now, if they go to a country where it's not as common for Americans to go to, there might be issues there. There might be issues with the payments. They might not get the full benefit. There's all these very weird rules out there with Social Security payments and living abroad. There's actually a guide online about that. So you can just, if you Google it, you say moving abroad, Social Security, and it will list a lot of bureaucratic things there, and they have documents. But yeah, Americans in Europe mostly are very successful in getting their Social Security paid into their accounts there, or maybe they'll get it paid to an American account and then they'll just transfer the money and do the currency exchange, which also carries some risk. The dollar has been taking a beating in the last year and a half versus the euro, for example. So that actually does affect. And that's part of the planning also. What type of professional and what type of credentials about looking for advice and desires? Yeah. So I would say I'm a very strong supporter of being a certified financial planner personally. Now, not all CFPs can handle cross-border work. I would see a person's pedigree, their experience. In cross-border planners, we usually say it. We say we work with US expats. That's the kind of advisor that you're looking for. Someone who works with this amazing group of people that knows about the cross-border issues. That's what you really want. And there's also a guide there that Maggie shared. Feel free to grab it there. It's a checklist for Americans moving abroad. It has a bunch of questions, a bunch of things that you should be looking into if you're considering moving abroad.
Yeah. So, Barbara, to continue on your question here, I see that you're a CFP and don't have the expertise here. It doesn't seem like there's a specific designation that focuses
Right.
on cross border, but I
Right.
know somebody says you should look at the Global Financial Planning Institute. And then Otto, I know we're a tax and are a tax expert, which kind of helps in that global space. But just
Yes.
like anything else, people have those niches. They're with business owners or with widows or divorcees, and Otto's is really with that cross-border planning. And so it is just finding somebody, I think, who has that niche and that expertise there.
Uh,
And we can't be experts in everything. And clearly we see all these nuances that are going on.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, GFI is good. I know people there are good people. So GFI is an institution that doing that also. I copy and pasted there in the chat. Passport to Wealth. That's a online directory that is run by my colleague Ariel Tucker. She's in Switzerland. We've been friends and colleagues for years. And basically, it's a great directory about a lot of professionals that have the expertise and dedicate their efforts to helping US expats or people considering moving. So yeah, absolutely. Let me know if there's any other questions. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think this was great just to get some of that foundational information. I'm glad you guys were able to grab the guide. And I encourage you to reach out to Otto either for yourself or even if you have questions about your clients, just because we want to make sure everyone gets the right information. And he's truly an expert in this area. So I'm happy to stay on and answer any other questions or ask Otto any other questions that you
Yeah.
have while we're on today. Otherwise, yeah, grab his guide and reach out to him as there's a lot of nuances, a lot to learn here, I think, before we travel.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah. And I'm always on LinkedIn, so you feel free to reach out there.
Yeah. We thank you all for coming today. Of course, we'll be back here again next week talking more about money beliefs with a financial therapist, which will be great as I don't think we talk much about financial therapy. So that should be a really fun conversation. But Ada, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and hope to see
Thank you.
everyone again next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. So we'll talk to everyone again next week. All right. We'll talk to you all later. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay.